The night was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes a person feel something is about to happen. Ethan walked into the small town diner, the one that stayed open even when everything else closed early. The neon sign outside flickered like it was tired of shining. Inside, only two people were working, the cook in the back, and Lena, the silent waitress. Ethan had seen her before. She never talked much, but tonight she looked different. Her eyes kept moving to the door, like she was waiting for someone, or afraid someone might walk in. Her hands were shaking slightly when she placed the menu on his table. He tried to smile at her. "You okay?" he asked. She froze for half a second like she wanted to say something important, but then she simply nodded and walked away. Ethan frowned. Something felt wrong. He had known Lena only as the quiet girl who minded her own business, but tonight her silence felt heavier, almost dangerous. Ethan sat down at his usual table, the one near the window. Outside, the road was empty, no cars, no noise, just darkness stretching into more darkness. He tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, telling himself he was overthinking. Maybe she was tired. Maybe it was nothing. But deep inside, a strange tension filled the air like a war was starting around him, a war he didn't understand. When Lena returned with his coffee, she didn't look at him directly. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "Be careful tonight." Ethan looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder toward the kitchen door as if someone might be listening. Then she forced a small, tense smile and walked away again. Ethan couldn't ignore it now. His heartbeat grew faster. He watched her moving from table to table, pretending to work, but he could see it clearly. She was scared. Not tired. Not sad. Scared. Something or someone had shaken her. He wanted to call her back, ask her what she meant, but before he could, the diner door pushed open. A cold wind entered first, followed by three men in dark jackets. Their faces were hard, unfriendly, and their eyes scanned the room like they were searching for trouble. Lena stopped moving the second she saw them. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, Ethan thought she might run. Instead, she walked quickly to the counter and disappeared behind it, pretending to clean something. The three men sat in the booth opposite Ethan. They didn't order anything. They didn't talk to each other. They only kept their sharp eyes fixed on everyone in the room. Ethan felt the tension rising like a storm. He looked at Lena. She gave him a tiny shake of her head, telling him silently, "Don't interfere. Don't speak. Don't look." It felt like he had stepped into a battle he didn't know existed. A silent war. A war of looks, fear, and unspoken danger. The cook in the back dropped something, the loud clang echoing through the diner. Lena flinched. One of the men stood up immediately, walked to the counter, and leaned in close to her. "Seen anyone new tonight?" he asked. Her voice trembled, but she stayed quiet. She only shook her head. He slammed his hand on the counter. "I asked you a question." Ethan stood halfway from his seat, ready to step in, but Lena looked at him with wide, warning eyes. She didn't want him involved. She didn't want him to speak. She didn't want him to even breathe loudly. Ethan slowly sat down again. She whispered something to the man, too soft for Ethan to hear. The man stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment before returning to his booth. 5 minutes passed. Impossible long minutes. Minutes filled with fear. Then suddenly, the men stood up and walked out the door without saying a word. The moment they left, Lena leaned against the counter, breathing heavily like she had been holding her breath for hours. Ethan rushed to her. "Who were they? What's going on?" She didn't answer. She simply grabbed his wrist tightly, tighter than he expected, and pulled him toward his table. With shaking hands, She lifted the wooden panel under his seat and slid something inside. A small folded paper. "Take it later," she whispered. "Not now. Not here." "But Lena. Go home. Don't look back." Her voice was filled with fear, deeper than anything Ethan had ever heard. He opened his mouth to ask again, but she shook her head sharply. "There's a war you don't see," she said. "A war that already started." He didn't understand. But her fear was real. And her final words stayed with him long after he walked out of the diner. "Someone is watching you, and you don't even know it." Ethan walked home that night with the cold wind chasing him. Every step felt heavier than the last. Lena's words kept replaying in his mind like an echo he couldn't escape. "Take it later. Not now. There's a war you don't see." He had no idea what she meant. There was nothing dangerous in his life, nothing strange, at least that's what he thought. When he reached his small apartment, he locked the door twice, something he never did before. He dropped his keys, sat on the couch, and stared at his hands. They were shaking. Not from fear alone, but from confusion. What war? Who were those men? Why was Lena so scared? His mind kept spinning, but one thought pulled him back. The note she hid under the table. He needed to read it. The next morning, Ethan returned to the diner. The sun was out, the streets busy, the world normal, but Ethan felt different. The diner looked the same from the outside, but inside, something had changed. Lena wasn't there. A new waitress was cleaning tables. Ethan approached her. "Is Lena coming today?" he asked. The girl looked confused. "Lena? The one who worked the night shift?" "Yes. She quit this morning." "Didn't give a reason." Ethan felt a chill run through him. Lena disappearing the day after those men visited could not be normal. Something was wrong. She knew something dangerous, and she tried to warn him. Ethan hurried to his usual table, bent down, and slid his fingers under the wooden panel. It was still there. A small folded note. His heart pounded as he opened it. Inside were 3 simple words, written in rushed handwriting. "Don't trust him." That was it. No name. No explanation. No details. Just 3 words that made everything even more confusing. He stared at the note for a long time. Who was him? Who did she want him to avoid? The men from last night? Someone he knew? Someone he trusted? Ethan rubbed his face in frustration. He needed answers. As he stepped out of the diner, his phone buzzed. The name on the screen made him pause. Mark. His best friend. The person he trusted the most. The one who always supported him. "Hey man," Mark said on the phone, cheerful as always. "Where are you? I was thinking we could meet. Got something important to talk about." Ethan hesitated. "Important? What kind of important?" "Yeah, sure," Ethan said quietly. "Where should we meet?" "Same place as always. You remember?" Of course he remembered. Their usual meeting spot, the old bridge that overlooked the river. Calm, quiet, away from crowds. Ethan started walking, but his mind was spinning again. Don't trust him. Was the note about Mark? No, that made no sense. Mark was his friend since high school. Mark had been there when Ethan had nothing. Mark always helped him, guided him, pushed him forward. Mark couldn't be the warning. Right? But then Ethan remembered something from last night, something small, but now it felt bigger. When the 3 men entered the diner, one of them had looked at Ethan like he recognized him. Like he knew something Ethan didn't. But why would strangers recognize him? Unless someone close to Ethan had talked about him. Someone who shouldn't have. Ethan pushed the thought away. He didn't want to believe it. but the fear in Lena's eyes kept flashing before him. The way she whispered, "Someone is watching you, and you don't even know it." When Ethan reached the bridge, Mark was already there, leaning on the railing, smiling as usual. "Hey man," Mark greeted. "Good to see you." Ethan forced a smile, but he stayed alert. He kept the note hidden in his pocket. "So what's the important thing?" Ethan asked. Mark looked over the river and said, "I found something big. A job, an opportunity. It could change our lives." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What kind of opportunity?" Mark hesitated for a moment, just a small moment, but Ethan caught it. A hesitation he had never seen before. Mark always spoke confidently, freely, but now he was choosing his words carefully. "Look," Mark said slowly, "there are some people who want to invest. They're strong people. Serious people. They asked about you." Ethan's heart dropped. "They asked about you?" The same night men appeared at the diner? The same night Lena became terrified. Ethan tried to speak calmly. "Why would they ask about me? What do they want?" Mark looked at him with a strange half-smile. "You'll understand soon. Just trust me." Ethan felt the note burning inside his pocket. "Don't trust him." Mark placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "We're in this together. Don't worry." But for the first time in his life, Ethan did worry. Mark's touch felt unfamiliar. His smile felt forced. His words felt heavy. Ethan stepped back slightly. Mark noticed it. "What's wrong?" Ethan shook his head. "Nothing, just tired." But inside, everything was shaking. He didn't want to believe the note. He didn't want to suspect his friend. But something was wrong. Very wrong. And this was only the beginning. Days passed, but Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Lena's note. Don't trust him. The words burned in his mind every time Mark called, every time he smiled, every time he offered another opportunity. Ethan wanted to ignore it. He wanted to believe in the friend he had known for years. But small things began to bother him. Mark started asking questions about Ethan's life he had never asked before. "How much money did you save? What are your plans for next year? Who else knows about your work?" Each question seemed normal, casual even, but Ethan felt something dark behind them. One evening, Mark invited Ethan to his apartment to discuss a business opportunity. The apartment was fancy, much fancier than Ethan expected. He noticed expensive electronics, bottles of alcohol, and a wall full of framed certificates and photos that suggested Mark had connections he never mentioned. "See, I've been thinking," Mark said, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. "I can help you invest your savings. Big returns. Guaranteed." Ethan hesitated, remembering Lena's note in his pocket. Don't trust him. But Mark's eyes were bright and confident. "We've always had each other's back, right?" Mark asked. "You can trust me." Ethan swallowed. He wanted to believe it. He wanted to trust his friend. Days turned into weeks. Ethan started giving Mark more personal details, more trust, more money. Every time he handed over another envelope, another account password, his heart thumped, and the warning in Lena's note grew louder. Then strange things began to happen. Money he thought was safe disappeared. Mark avoided questions about documents, emails, phone calls. Ethan found messages on Mark's phone he wasn't supposed to see. Every discovery made him pause, but he wanted to rationalize. Mark was clever. He was careful. He wouldn't lie, would he? One night, Ethan stayed at Mark's apartment to finalize a big investment. They had gone through several contracts and plans, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling something was off. Mark suddenly excused himself and left the room. Ethan noticed the phone Mark left behind. On the screen were messages from someone with an anonymous name. The deal is ready. He won't know until it's too late. Ethan's heart stopped. He realized the truth. Mark wasn't just hiding something. Mark was planning to take everything from him. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. Mark had been building this trap carefully, and Lena's warning wasn't just a coincidence. Ethan left Mark's apartment quietly that night, his stomach churning with fear and betrayal. He returned home and sat alone, holding Lena's note again. He read it slowly. Don't trust him. The words were no longer just advice. They were a prophecy. Ethan's mind replayed the diner, the night of the men, Lena's terrified face, her shaking hands. Everything made sense now. The silent warning, the note under the table, the fear she had seen this coming long before Ethan did. The next day, Ethan confronted Mark. I know everything, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Mark smiled. A calm, practiced smile. What are you talking about? The money. The messages. The lies. I know what you're doing. Mark's smile didn't fade. Instead, he leaned closer. You don't understand, Ethan. I'm helping you. You'll see. Ethan stepped back, fear and anger mixing together. The friend he trusted most was now a stranger who had set up a trap to destroy him. Over the next few weeks, Ethan watched as Mark took advantage of his trust. Every plan Mark made seemed perfect on the outside but was slowly draining Ethan's resources, his time, and his energy. Ethan wanted to scream, to call Lena, to tell someone, but he couldn't. Lena had disappeared after that night. He had no one to guide him, no one to warn him. Each evening, he returned home and sat alone, thinking about what could have been different if he had just listened to Lena the first night. If he had listened, he wouldn't be here. He wouldn't have lost so much. He wouldn't have felt so betrayed. One evening, everything came to a head. Mark called him, excited. Tonight, it's final. The deal will be done. Everything will be yours, everything will be under control. Ethan paused. The words made his blood run cold. It was too late. Mark's plan had reached the final stage. Ethan realized he had been a pawn. Every smile, every promise, every piece of trust he had given Mark had been used against him. And as he looked at the note one last time before stepping out that night, he whispered softly. I should have listened. I should have trusted Lena. But the warning had come too late. The friendship he thought was unbreakable had turned into a trap, and the war Lena had warned him about was now in full swing. Ethan didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. 10 years had passed. 10 long, bitter years. Ethan walked slowly down the streets of his small town, now older, quieter, and tired. The vibrant energy he once had was gone. His smile rarely reached his eyes. The wounds of betrayal, trust broken, and opportunities lost had left deep scars. Everywhere he looked, he remembered Mark, not the friend he had trusted, but the stranger who had destroyed his life. Every corner, every familiar place seemed to whisper the warning he had ignored that night at the diner. Don't trust him. The words from Lena's note had haunted him for a decade. Ethan had rebuilt part of his life, slowly, painfully. Multiple jobs, late nights, small apartments, financial struggles, all reminders of what he had lost. He had tried to move on, to trust people again, but the shadow of betrayal made it impossible. And yet, he could never forget Lena. He often thought of her that night, the way she trembled behind the counter, the whisper, the hidden note. She had tried to save him. But he had ignored her. He had trusted the wrong person. And now he carried the weight of that mistake every day. One evening, Ethan found himself standing outside the old diner. It had been abandoned for years, the windows dusty and cracked. The neon sign flickered weakly, struggling to shine like it used to. He remembered the night of the warning, the fear in Lena's eyes, and the men who had appeared out of nowhere. The diner felt frozen in time, like it was holding memories just for him. Ethan walked inside carefully, his steps echoing through the empty room. He approached the wooden table where Lena had left the note all those years ago. The table was worn, the paint chipped, but he remembered every detail. With trembling hands, he lifted the wooden panel under the seat, and there it was. Another note. Faded, fragile, and almost unreadable. He unfolded it. The words were simple, but their meaning hit him harder than ever. He will destroy your future. Please be careful. Ethan's chest tightened. She had tried to say more. She had seen the danger, but circumstances had stopped her. The men that night, the silent warning, the hidden note, everything had been a chance to change the course of his life. He realized that moment in the diner had been the fork in the road. If he had listened, everything could have been different. Ethan sat down, staring at the table, lost in thought. 10 years had passed, yet the regret was fresh, burning as if it had just happened. Every relationship he had lost, every opportunity stolen by Mark, every sleepless night, it all traced back to that night. He remembered Lena's face one last time in his mind. Fear, courage, silence, all mixed into a single moment that could have saved him. He whispered softly to himself. I should have listened. I should have trusted you. That night, Ethan decided he had waited long enough. 10 years of regret were enough. He would find Lena. He had to. He needed answers, closure, and maybe a chance to finally understand the woman who had tried to protect him. He spent the next few days tracking her down through old records, asking discreet questions, following faint leads. Finally, he discovered a small town on the outskirts of the state. Lena was there, living a quiet life, away from danger, away from the chaos of his past. Ethan felt a strange mix of hope and fear. What would he say to her after all these years? Would she even remember him? Would she blame him for ignoring her warning? The day he found her, she was standing outside a small cafe, arranging flowers in the window. She looked different, older, calmer, peaceful in a way that contrasted sharply with the memory of that terrified night. Ethan approached her cautiously. Lena, he said softly. She turned. Her eyes widened slightly, recognition flashing instantly. Ethan, she whispered, her voice catching. He held up the old note in his hand. I finally understand. You were trying to warn me. I didn't listen. I lost everything because I didn't listen. Lena looked down, her face sad but gentle. I tried. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. Mark, he threatened me. I was scared, but I hoped you'd find the note and understand. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. 10 years of anger, pain, and regret came rushing out. I should have trusted you, he said. I should have listened. Everything would have been different if I had. Lena placed a hand on his shoulder. You can't change the past, Ethan. But you can learn from it. That's all we ever can do. Ethan nodded, realizing she was right. He couldn't go back. He couldn't undo the past. But he could finally face it. And maybe, just maybe, he could start again. Ethan stood quietly outside the small cafe, watching Lena. The sunlight reflected softly on her hair, and for a moment, he almost didn't recognize her. She had changed over the decade, but the fear in her eyes from that night still lingered in his memory. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Lena, he said softly. She turned. Recognition flashed in her eyes. A brief, startled pause, then a faint smile. Ethan, she whispered, voice trembling. They sat at a small table by the window. Ethan placed the old note carefully in front of her, the faded paper a silent testament to the years of regret, fear, and mistakes. "I finally understand," he said. "I should have listened. I lost everything because I didn't listen to you. You were trying to warn me." Lena's eyes filled with sorrow. She glanced down, clasping her hands tightly. "I wanted to tell you, Ethan, but I couldn't. That night. Mark was dangerous. He had plans you couldn't see. He would have destroyed you, maybe worse, if I spoke. I was scared, and I stayed silent to protect you." Ethan leaned forward, heart pounding. "Mark, he betrayed me. He took everything I trusted him with. How did you know? How did you see it coming?" Lena took a deep breath. "I overheard him. He had been planning for months. That night at the diner. I followed him secretly. I saw the men who came in. They were connected to him. I tried to warn you, but he was watching me. I didn't have a choice." Ethan's hands shook slightly. "All this, you saw it, and I didn't listen. I ruined 10 years of my life." Lena reached across the table, placing her hand gently over his. "You didn't know. You couldn't have known. I did what I could, but fate, and fear, kept us apart. The note was the only way I could reach you safely." Ethan stared at her, a mix of anger, relief, and sorrow in his eyes. "If I had listened, if I had read it right that night." Lena shook her head. "We can't change the past. What matters is what you do now. You survived. You learned. That's more than many do in a lifetime." The weight of her words settled over Ethan. 10 years of regret, anger, and lost opportunities seemed lighter now, as if her presence had lifted a piece of the burden he carried. He finally understood the depth of her courage, the risk she had taken to try to protect him, even while staying silent. "Why didn't you leave town sooner?" Ethan asked. "Why stay so close to danger?" Lena's lips pressed together for a moment. "Because someone had to watch. Someone had to make sure Mark didn't hurt others. And after that night, I realized my life wouldn't be the same if I ran. I had to be careful, and I had to wait. Waiting was safer than speaking." Ethan nodded slowly, absorbing everything she said. "I owe you everything. I owe you my life, in a way." Lena smiled faintly. "No. You owe yourself. You survived, Ethan. You faced the consequences of your mistakes. That is what matters. And now you can start again. Make your own choices. Trust carefully. Learn from the past, but don't let it chain you." Ethan took a deep breath. He felt a strange calm settle over him, a peace he hadn't known in years. He had faced betrayal, lost friendships, and suffered regret, but here he was, finally understanding the truth. Lena's gaze met his. "Sometimes the quietest people see the loudest dangers," she said softly. "Remember that. Don't ignore the warnings, even if they come in silence." He nodded, feeling the full weight of those words. He finally understood the courage behind her silence, the strength it took to try to protect someone without risking herself. For the first time in 10 years, Ethan felt hope. The past could not be changed, but the future was his to shape. He could rebuild, trust wisely, and finally live without the shadow of betrayal hanging over him. Lena stood, brushing off her hands. "I have to go now. Life goes on, Ethan. Remember what I taught you even without words." Ethan watched her walk away, feeling a strange mix of sadness and gratitude. She had been his guardian in silence, a quiet hero in the story of his life. He touched the note again, folded carefully, and placed it in his pocket. "I'll remember," he whispered. "I'll never forget." As Lena disappeared down the street, Ethan stepped outside into the bright sunlight. For the first time in years, he felt free from fear, regret, and betrayal. The war that had started silently years ago had finally ended. And though scars remained, Ethan knew he had survived, learned, and could finally start again. Sometimes, he realized, the truth comes quietly. And sometimes, it takes 10 years to finally hear it.